Great. Okay. Good. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another Facebook Live in the group. Make sure you say hi in the comments so I can see people coming in. This is great. Well, this is going to be a real joy tonight, and it's going to be a great conversation, I know. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Andy. I'm so glad to be here.
So we've been looking at getting this talk together for a while. It's just getting schedules and that kind of thing, and it's great to have you here tonight. And we kind of connected because of the group, I guess. I can't remember whether it's the group or whether it was the Beyond the Operant conversations or the Phantom of the Operant, but it was something around that got us together. And I remember we kind of connected on through whatever communication it was, and it wasn't long before we had our first chat together.
Yeah. I had watched. I was fascinated by the Beyond the Operant, and I had watched. It was you and Kim, and oh gosh,
Kathy.
Yeah, Kathy. I mean, that just. I'm not. I had to re-listen to that because some of it was just information. It was so smart I couldn't quite get it, but I knew that you were talking about something that was life-changing, and that would not just be for the animal that needed support, but in this case for myself. And so what really spoke to me is the willingness to explore a new way of thinking, and keep it simple. It's one thing to address the behavior, it's another thing to address the thinking and the feelings that actually lead to the behavior or predict the behavior or that the behavior is expressing. And I arrive at this conversation today, which I'm exceptionally grateful for. And I want to share it on a group level that since I heard that particular Beyond the Operant conversation and then reached out to you I wanted to connect anyway, and I wanted to have you on and talk as it was in the baby stages of a podcast that is still gaining content and growing, but not released. I remember as I began to explore what you were doing in dog-centered care, I remember thinking, what an honor it would be to be able to speak there, and how could that be possible for me? And so this is to repeat myself, this is a seminal moment for me to be in this conversation with you in this group that I hold in high esteem. So thank you for that opportunity.
Well, thank you. And when you think about finding the Beyond the Operant, were you already on a bit of a journey anyway at that point? Or
Yes.
did you stumble across it, or were you kind of, the universe is kind of pointing you in certain directions already?
Yeah, it's a yes and. I like any good improv, it's a yes and so a lot of people are aware of the journey that I've taken publicly over the last several years and what preceded that, and that's I'm not going to shy away from that, but it's well documented, and so it's not where I want to put the focus of my time today, because I really want to talk about this particular topic, how projection poisoned my dog training, and so this is a lead into that. What I found is that I was ready to learn at a different level with different people in a different way of doing things, and so that's what a number of dog pros like yourself made available to me, and I really like learning. I don't know how much I like school per se, in that conventional model, but I really like learning, and I was so excited to be learning something that I was excited about again. And it just became self-reinforcing, whether I understand it or not. Let me watch this conversation that you're having with Kathy and Kim, and then there was another fascinating one where Mike was there too, and the four of you were in conversation, and so it began to speak to me, even though I didn't totally understand what you were saying. It spoke to me in a way that that was lighting me up in a way that I love to experience and I hadn't felt in a while. And I knew that I had a lot I had a lot of growing to do. Um, I've said many times, and I continue to say that I am personally and professionally, I am um, I'm in a living amends. Excuse me. So I am committed to amending my behavior on an ongoing, on a daily basis. That's just part of how I need to live. So the opportunity to learn new things also came with the opportunity to make things right. And I know that right is subjective. It's also deeply personal, and um, though it may be a loaded word, it helped me begin to make a distinction between this is a better choice for the animal, this is a lesser choice for the animal. And that's a pretty good barometer. And I also have come to, I saw then what I have come to understand now, and that is that there's a lot of skill to be had in behavior modification. But more importantly for me, and I'll only speak for myself, and I can probably speak on behalf of the at this point a sizable number of people I've been clients I've been privileged to work with, that um, if I don't look at what I think, if I don't examine what I think, or further, if I don't examine how I think, then the way that I'm behaving as the trainer is going to impact the dog in unintended ways. So I have to keep scaling back. And for maybe a lot of people know, because I'm public about this, I've been clean and sober for quite some time. And the beginning of that revolution for me was to begin, because I can't have somebody next to me every day holding my hand, making sure I don't drink. Like that's not actually practical, which means there will come a time where I'm by myself and I have a feeling or a thought that I don't know how to manage. And my practiced behavior will be to reach for something that will change the way I feel. I'm a stimulus augmenter, to put it generally. So when I committed to that not being an option, a choice, then I had to find other ways to get relief. And some of it's by approximation. So sometimes that looked like a lot of sugar. Sometimes it looked like staying up late. It looked like a bunch of other things, but it didn't necessarily mean but it did mean you didn't grab the bottle today. Where I'm going with this is, um, as I begin to get what we refer to in recovery as emotionally sober, and I begin to better predict and understand the feelings and have healthier ways to process the feelings and healthier ways to manage the thinking, uh, I I really I really latched on to what a mentor of mine said early. He said, "You are not responsible for your first thought, but you are responsible for your second thought and your first action." And that gave me just enough grace. Okay, that's a first thought. What's my second thought? What's the action I can take after that? So I had to keep finding ways to make different choices to create, new neural pathways in that sense. And I don't look for relief in the same ways anymore. But I practiced in order to get there. I practiced examining as objectively and critically as I could what I was thinking and why I was thinking it. So that's a tee up for how I brought this, how I offered this conversation today, how projection poisoned my dog training. So it's about 16 and a half years I've been clean and sober. And the reason why I point that out is it has taken me 16 plus years to have had the experience that I had a few months ago that lit that light bulb about how projection has impacted my training. And in sitting with it, I'm here to talk about it live for the first time. So I'm going to share something that, and for anybody that's watching it, I've not shared this with Andy. I've not shared this publicly at all. Stay with me. It will become practical, but I want to talk about how I got to this experience. I was, my son and I, my mother and I have reconciled. My mother was very poorly cared for, and so she consequently made some choices in parenting me that she is in the process of amending. and she and I gratefully have unbelievably, we have a loving relationship, a loving, um, transparent, ongoing relationship. And I won't get into the details out of respect for her, but but one of her choices, to manage her thoughts and feelings, was to drink a lot. So I had gone to visit her a few months ago, and my son and I, we went down. We're currently based in Texas, and so we went to visit her a few hours away. Um, and we were staying the night at her place, and he and I were having a sleeping bag party on the living room floor. And I had a dream, and in the dream, I felt myself. It was such a visceral experience that I felt I felt me in the sleeping bag being lifted up off the floor. And I remember at least being cognitive enough to think, well, they don't have earthquakes in Texas, so I don't know what's happening, but something's moving. I looked over at my son and I saw he was still laying there. And I found myself seeing the environment around me. And then I was moved over into the office area where that my mom currently has in her home. And I saw, there she was at her desk and she was writing. There was a bottle next to her. And I felt myself wanting to say to her, as if in what I'd never been able to say as a child, please don't pick up the bottle. The writing that she was doing was important, but I saw that she had the impulse to go for the bottle. And as she began to go for the bottle, I started to say to her, don't touch the bottle. And as I said that, this beautiful blue nose, blue grayish, I'm going to say like adolescent female pit bull comes jumping up onto me in this dream experience. And I look at the pit bull and I think, I need to manage this dog's behavior. And I look over again at my dream mom at her dream desk with this dream bottle of alcohol that's going to interrupt her inner thinking. And it hits me. This pit bull and all of my dog training, or at least an inordinate amount of my dog training, has been a projection of me trying to manage behavior that reminds me of alcoholism.
Wow, and that's really strong and very profound. I just want to say I really appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable in this space, Matt. I really appreciate it, and I think it is going to resonate with many people listening in regarding their own stories and their own experiences that create that kind of worldview that we turn up with. And it's a very strong, there's a lot of very strong metaphors in that dream, I think.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what the brain does when we're coming through stuff. And I think about some of the things that the team at Barks have been talking about regarding how when we start to think about things differently, when that mindset shift changes, when we start to think about working differently in a different way, when we turn up to the behavior of another living sentient being, it really shines a light back on us, actually, and our own behaviors. And I hear what you were saying about the therapy process. I've shared myself about my drug addiction back when I had, which led up to my breakdown in my 30s and things, and a lot of unresolved stuff myself there. And I think anybody who hasn't had an addiction of sorts, I think it's important to say that those things that we turn to, it is kind of the buzz we get and the fact that we can disconnect. But the
Yeah.
real underlying thing is the disconnection to something else that we have to find.
Yeah.
And it is about how we change our relationship with those feelings and thoughts
Yeah.
over time. It's not about pushing them away or finding, like I say, it can be very easy to find another thing to replace
Yeah.
the drink or the drugs or something weird, but over time, this is Reese. I'm with the Afghan house today. He's not a polar bear. How are you doing? Uh,
I just want to pause and say I have hair envy.
well, yeah, well, we all do. When you're sharing space with Afghans, I've got three of the Afghans here at the moment. And this is Reese. He's the bigger boy, and he's a very handsome boy, aren't you, Reese? Thank you for cuddles. So Matt, let's come back to this. So this is really important, isn't it? Because the reason this is so powerful for me is on a wider scale is because this shows also some of the challenges we have when we're working with the general public and the things that have gone into their own worldview, that safe worldview, their own belief systems, their own value systems, underpinned by their own experiences and their own trauma. And how difficult it is actually to turn up to the emotional truth of another
Yeah.
when we struggle to reconcile our own.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a really important point that what I hear inherent what you're offering here is how to set reasonable expectations. So nobody's calling me for help because they're on a winning streak. And I really appreciated when my buddy, I'm grateful to call him my buddy, Dr. Chris Pockle, said that his he coaches to principle. When he has an opportunity to meet somebody for support, he wants to leave them with a way of thinking that they can keep coming back to when he's not in the room. So that spoke to me. And so what I'm looking at with any interaction that I'm having with a first time client or on our 23rd meeting, excuse me, is how do I help take pressure off? And that's usually how I offer it to the people I'm working with. I've learned, I have learned without substances that I'm actually deeply empathetic. And I want to double down on your point about the, does it feel better? Did it feel better when I drank? Sure. When I did drugs? Sure. But what I could never access after that was done was how to reconnect. What I've had to do in my own personal self-reflection is be willing to surrender my outs, which is not to say from a personal safety standpoint, but there's a number of things that I've taken off the table that are no longer a legitimate out for me, because I have arrived at a point where what I want most is to experience connection. What I want most to offer people is engagement. What I want to bring is curiosity. What I want to encourage is courage. That feeds me in a way that I wasn't able to feed myself before. And so that disconnect that you're pointing to is really important, because one could argue pretty reasonably that we're never not connected, but the experience of not being connected can be so painful, and it can become normalized. So I come to somebody's house, or I talk with them on the phone, or meet with them by Zoom, and I'm thinking, how do I help take the pressure off? And so, because I've recognized that I'm a deeply empathetic person, and I can have a skill set now, not just through recovery, but with a lot of therapeutic work and process work and my own personal um, daily meditation practices and accountability, that kind of stuff, that I can hear what somebody's saying and I can empathetically reflect back to them some of the challenges. And now I can relate. That's another one of the great gifts that I've been given with the support from people like yourself and others, is I was able to bridge this place where I may never train again. And to be honest, because the experience of some public response to a lot of the things that I did was so painful, I wasn't sure that I was going to live. It was that dark for me. So I've been able, with great support, to in and out of this profession, I've crossed the bridge to a place where I feel like, as you said right before we started, like I've come home. Okay, this is who I am and what I have to offer. And here's where I can contribute unique value to somebody's experience. So all of that leads up to the very first call where I'm listening empathetically and reflecting back what I'm hearing, and I am framing it under how do I help take pressure off for everybody here? And that then leads to the utilization of some really good training skills I've learned along the way. I often will say that I don't think the word trainer does justice to what a lot of people really provide to their animal and human clients. Um, but it is what it is, and I'm not hung up on that, and I'm certainly not anti-training. What I am is I am is I am in favor of me continuing to practice consideration and curiosity. And inevitably, I just get to better why questions so I can offer better how support. So none of what I've done, this is another grace point that people help me understand. Nothing I've done actually, and I've done a lot of things in and out of this profession I wish I hadn't done, or things I wish I had done that I didn't do, but nothing I have done will be wasted if I'm willing to use it to help somebody else. So I arrive at a conversation with everything I said, and also the not only the ability, but the need to say to somebody, yeah, me too, did that too. I'm in no position to judge. And that's just a really, for me, that's a really good place to work from. And then that allows us to unpack the inherent projections that are here. I get this. You want your dog to behave on a walk on leash because it embarrasses you, and you're new in the neighborhood. Like, I just had somebody tell me that recently. Totally get that. You know, oh, you're in a committed relationship technically, but one of you is not showing up, and this dog has become your surrogate. Okay. These are real life experiences that we're having that don't seem to fit the standard training mold, but more than that, they don't seem to fit in the conversations that I think are really important to have when I enter into somebody's home to support this quality of life experience that's in crisis.
And that's really powerful, isn't it? Because what you're saying to them and their nervous system
Yes,
is, I hear you.
I hear you. Yep.
And actually, I think we can feel under a bit of pressure sometimes, especially on a first consult, to show something a bit funky and a bit whatever. But I always feel that the most important thing to that caregiver is to feel heard, actually,
Yep.
to leave with us leaving feeling heard. And I think this is the beautiful thing about that shift from task oriented only to more of a care approach. And as you say, your own journey through task to care is no
Yeah.
different to many of ours, Matt. It's just yours has been played out more publicly. I think we've all got to recognize that and the pressures that that brought to you. But it's not a unique thing. We've all gone through a journey of sorts. But that care starts with connecting to the emotional experience of the caregiver in the way that you talk about. And what I'm hearing from you is that the healing that you've gone through yourself, um, which was happening even before you started to think about the different changing in how you work. But this period now seems to
Yeah.
be really a powerful part of that healing process. And people say, don't they, that hurt people can hurt people, and that is totally the case. But you know what? Healed people can heal people. And that's what I'm hearing from you as well here about the power
Yeah.
of the healing process for us and how we can support others and define ourselves by that, not by what came before.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that, Andy. And I just am thinking of this for the first time. It is also true that hurt people can also heal people, not through trying to hurt them, but it cannot be as simple as this or this. It
Yes.
just can't, because that's not the reality of the emotional experience. There are people that are, I've seen people make extraordinarily generous and selfless choices when they've never done anything other than harm others and themselves, but something presented themselves in that moment. We see this a lot in the dog world. There's the dog world. It's pretty sticky to talk about people who are not living in homes, who we typically call homeless. I think there's a better word for that, but let's see people who are without housing, who live with their animals. It's pretty easy to pass judgment on that. But if you spend any amount of time with those people, which is a result of recovery, that has given me an opportunity to connect with those people in a unique way. What they're willing to do for their dog is at on par, if not above par, with what a lot of people with resources do.
That's so true, because I do a lot of work with various kind of charities that support people who are living on the streets, and the relationship with their dogs is some of the deepest,
Yeah,
most when we talk about that kind of need for secure attachment, what that looks like, and that genuine bond,
yeah,
it's deeper than many will ever experience, actually.
yeah, yeah. On that note, I want to give a quick shout out to an organization I got introduced to maybe in the last 6 months, called Care for Equity. And it addresses on a deep, heartfelt, and deeply thoughtful level the complexity of Black and brown communities that don't have access to resources, that love their dogs as much as any of us do, that have a whole lot of judgment about how poorly they're taking care of their dogs. And I really appreciate, James and Jen, if you all ever watch this, then I am just giving you a shout out. But I strongly encourage people to check them out on Instagram or social media, because it is a deep and and uncomfortably thoughtful look at what people are experiencing, and how their experience in with a lot of impact is informed by this idea of what the right dog parent is, and what the right dog parent should be able to provide. And I don't I don't throw stones. I don't bash people. I mean, it's not good for my well-being. I think it's poor form, although I know it's pretty common in our field. But I was really bothered when I saw a recent post by somebody whose work I really respect, and the post said, these are the 4 things to do if you want to be a good dog parent. And one of the things, well, there were maybe 3 of the 4, but certainly one of the things implied that people could afford to provide that kind of care. So that's a message that's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. That the standard is, this is what you have to do, without consideration for who it is who's watching that and how it impacts them.
I mean, we hear similar narratives around bringing up kids,
Yes.
and I think there's a lot of similarities there, and also some of the cross-cultural
Yeah.
judgments as well. Again, listening to Sindor talking about
Yeah.
how things are viewed in India, and how, especially in the West, we just want to go over there. Well, that dog has to come in a home, or that can't be right based on my metric of safety and my metric of what normal is supposed to be.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's an important point too. Quick shout out to Tony Ann Willier at Mountain City Mutts, who does phenomenal work in the Pacific Northwest, and also can speak firsthand from her experience as an Indigenous person on the res, and the complications of that, and then the outside window of how the projections of how these people should be taking care of their dogs. There's a lot for me to learn.
And we have to invite reasoned and supportive safe spaces to have those conversations, because a lot of the projections that people have, often it's just down to lack of awareness.
Yeah.
When we become adults, our brain likes to create a safe worldview based on our own experiences, our value systems, our belief systems. It then wants to protect that safe worldview because it doesn't like to have to reappraise much. So we create our cognitive distortions and biases. And I
Yeah.
think we just have to be mindful of even those we might feel a bit, ooh, when somebody makes those things, recognize that's their worldview. And we have to find spaces where people can have that safety to reevaluate because it's not easy, Matt.
Oh.
I think about my own reevaluation. It took me my breakdown and my drug addiction.
Mhm.
So I'm not recommending those extremes, but I think it can be very easy just to shift along with your own perspective.
Yeah.
And especially, there's a great saying in humans and human psychology, which is the path to coercion is often laid with good intention.
Wow.
And I think this is the key. And I think, if only Matt would behave the way that I want him to, he'll be
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
problem there is I haven't asked you and I
Yeah.
haven't bothered to learn your experience or your truth. I've just
Right.
projected mine.
Right. It's just what you're saying is so important too, Andy, because this is for me to be able to have a conversation like this has taken a lot of years, a lot of hard knocks, and a ton of support. It's a skill set that I didn't have. It's a desire that was so deep for me to. It's part of how I experience connection, understanding that I don't understand another animal or human's perspective. But it's a skill set, and like anything, it takes practice. And the more I do it, the more I see the mistakes I made, the more I understand and appreciate the nuance, the more I appreciate the kind of mentorship I've had, and most of all, the more I appreciate the people like you. Got to, almost 20,000 strong in here, and just regularly when I don't often comment because I learn better usually from listening and reading and checking things in, but you have a lot of people here who, from my judgment, at least in terms of people who are posting and making themselves known, a lot of people here who are here in part because they have a deep desire to learn things differently. Not only learn different things, but learn things in a different way. And kudos, because these are it's going to be clumsy, awkward. Like there's a number of things, and for what it's worth, with so much being driven by safety, just fundamental to who we are. Um, there are some, no matter, there are some circumstances where no matter what I try to do, I cannot provide safety for somebody, which sometimes means like I remove myself, like I would remove myself from the dog's experience. But I want to offer another aspect of that experience, and that is being brave or courageous. And sometimes I'm asked to be brave, even if I don't feel safe. And if I can trust the people around me, or if I can trust the support I've been given, I take brave steps, and that leads to a deeper and elevated level of safety. And I offer that not in any way to dismiss or diminish the need for safety, but to acknowledge that I'll speak for myself and some of the people that I've been able to mentor in and out of this profession. Sometimes we do things that are hard and scary, and they don't feel safe. But you said, Andy, and I repeat this a lot to the people I work with, there's a difference between being safe and feeling safe. And so if I'm in a mentorship or leadership or public opinion, my opinion is not really worth a whole lot, by the way. I mean, take that, my questions, I appreciate being able to question things, but my opinion is my opinion. The experience of feeling supported in being brave or courageous, that's also a unique value. And so safe is an individual experience. It's a primal experience, um, and
And I think there's so many layers, isn't there? Because I think when we understand self more, when we connect to our worth more, that creates more protection, I think. And I hear what you're saying there as well about it comes back to this thing about the difference between as well as the difference between feeling vulnerable and being vulnerable,
Yeah.
and understanding how those things shift. And I think as well, recognizing our purpose,
Yeah.
because a lot of the kind of psychology around this is a lot of the time we think about this notion of what, well, believe in yourself, but actually when you think about it, the important thing is to be yourself and to recognize that that's enough, and ideally to have people that believe in you, because
Mhm.
that's how our social brain really does function the best.
Mhm.
So you and I, we both turn up on our different ways and do our thing, and as you say, there'll be people who we can't always connect to, and that's just the nature of it. And but without my husband is the one that really believes in me. What I believe in is my purpose, and that's what I think what you're talking about there, and that's what helps us to push forwards, even when it feels a bit uncomfortable, when it might not feel safe, as you say. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. So my um so when you talk about coming home, so one of the things I realized is I'm not a dog trainer. That is my profession. It's not who I am. My primary purpose is to support change and transformation in humans and animals. And right now, I do that through the experience of dog training. And when and if my purpose should change or the way in which I do that should change, I can roll with that. Like that's part of where I've landed. I also want to say for anybody that owns their own business, and something else I haven't talked about publicly, that several months ago. So we're in. I've had. Let's see. The Zen Dog as a company has been around. Gosh, I think we're into maybe 13, 14 years, maybe a little bit longer. And it's gone through a number of iterations. And then when we were based in LA for a while, and when the lockdowns hit, we just knew that we couldn't sustain. And it was a unique opportunity. Speaking of projections, it was a unique opportunity for me because we were home as pretty much everybody else was at that time, and in quarantine. And within about well, like the first 3 or 4 days, I felt like I was losing my mind because I was not in the rhythm or the habit that I had been in. But what was actually happening is I was beginning to experience how taxed my nervous system was.
Mm.
And I was working 80 to 100 hours a week, and I was doing this and I was doing that. And unfortunately, I was locked into something that would not allow me the time for mentorship and breathing and learning and growth and the um, the opportunities to sit and process with things. And I had a staff to be responsible to and those kinds of things. And then I realized after about a week in lockdown, I've been missing breakfast time with my little boy every morning and dinner and bedtime. And when he wakes up in the morning and sees me getting ready for work, and I'm moving quickly past them, and this is true for me and my dogs too. So draw whatever parallel works for you. But when he sees me moving quickly past him to get ready for work, because I have this thing to go do, which meets a bunch of my needs and also provides for the family, he started to do this thing that my wife, thank you, Brooke, helped me understand. So when he would see me in the morning, and I was excited to see him with all of these other agendas and projections happening, he began to get mad at me, wouldn't want me to touch him, wouldn't want me to talk to him. And I said with my logical brain, which wasn't helpful to him, what, I'm right here. Why don't you want to be with me? Like I'm here to be with you right now. Now's my time. And Brooke and she knew enough to ask him, do you feel mad that daddy's not here? And he said yes. And that's what he was trying to communicate with me. But because of my projection of who I thought I needed to be, this was how I was going to show up. And his experience was, you're not showing up.
Yeah.
So I got this extraordinary gift to change the way that I was a husband, was a father, and ran my business. And that's a big part of the last 3 years of this coming home. And the business is now built around my ability to show up for my family. And then everything else is going to have to work with that because I don't want them to pay the cost that I didn't know I was asking them to pay.
That's really powerful. I'm sure that resonates a lot. I remember speaking to a professional going back a while, and we were talking about purpose. And I said, "What's your purpose?" And they said to earn money, which is fine, but they weren't happy. And we went through some conversations. And when they came back for the next session, they realized actually that they wanted the money because they wanted to provide for the kids. But the realization was what the kids wanted provided was them. And
Yeah.
that's why they weren't happy. And actually, just spending some time with my husband, my husband, for those who don't know, he's an end of life nurse at a hospice. And he shares stuff with me. And nobody ever in that place says, I wish I'd spent more time on my business,
Yeah.
or had a bigger house, or I had a bigger car. They all say, I wish I'd spent more time with my kids. I wish I'd spent more time on that relationship, Matt. So I think coming
Yeah.
to that realization, whenever we come to it, however we come to it,
Yeah.
I think is an important thing to get that balance right. And especially if we have that privilege to be able to think along those lines,
Yeah.
especially
That's right.
when we have our own way of working things. So it
That's right.
sounds really, we keep talking about this notion of you coming home
Yeah.
on many, many levels, and the with a recognition that it's been a painful process.
Yeah.
And even what happened, like you say, with some of the reactions and responses to some of your earlier work, all these feed in. And I think one of the things that you've said many times, two words, grace and being humble. I think it's about being humble enough to continue to do that learning process, but to give ourselves grace, Matt,
Yeah.
because we're all a work in progress, and we have to keep defining ourselves based on what we're doing moving forwards, and let that drive our response,
Yeah.
not those kind of chains to the past and the feelings that we can easily fall into around guilt and shame and all these kind of things that can haunt us unless we are able to change our relationship with those feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. My uh this is something else I don't share about publicly. My um father is a retired Anglican bishop. And so for a lot of people, you could just say, "Oh, you're a preacher's kid," and then that would just make sense. It would just line up for them. Um, so I, as I worked through the reconciliation in my life journey, in my recovery journey, in my professional dog training journey, as I worked through reconciliation, which I have to acknowledge is not for the faint of heart. I understand with empathy why somebody doesn't want to even begin the reconciliation process of how they've treated their dogs or or themselves or other people, because that is not easy to look at. And I don't do that alone. I don't use my mind to qualify uh, the my behavior. I need reflection. I need accurate self appraisal skills, and I need reflection. But I want to give a real big open hand and open arms and hug to anybody that comes up against not wanting to make a change because seeing the change that they're getting away, seeing the new behavior and the old behavior that they're getting away from is too painful to sit with. That's reason enough for a lot of people to not change. So, um, so I was not comfortable with the word forgiveness. I just wasn't comfortable. And then a dear friend and mentor of mine who had served in Vietnam, who had a lot of things to not be able to reconcile, he said to me that for him, forgiveness was the willingness to see things differently. And I was able to respond to that in a way. And so I think that the willingness to see things differently affords a lot of what we're talking about here. And one of the clues, if it's useful for anybody, one of the clues for me when I had this dream that I led this conversation with, and I was reflecting on it, and oh my gosh, I've been projecting, and we're a pit bull family, and I'm a pit bull lover, and all of that. But I remember saying jokingly for a number of years to my clients, "Oh, your dog's just like an alcoholic. They're impulsive. They do what they want, blah blah blah," and we would laugh and joke about it. Not fair to the dog, at all, not accurate, not objective. But the clue for me is I continue to look back on behavior so I can have new experiences. So the dogs and people that I'm here to support can have new experiences. Is how do I talk about this? What's my language around this? And I understand and respect from the scientific community the need for objectivity. I expect from a learning standpoint the need for objectivity because that is the buffer against my projection. Even the recent conversation, Simone Gavois posted about this, the recent conversation about in the fact grabbing attempt to say, well, I'm going to forget the scientist's name, but when the dominance theory was offered and then the gentleman came back and he debunked it, but there are more stages to it. There's been an evolution of understanding around it, and the dominant behavior seems to be specific, at least the last study that I understood, seems to be specific to when it's mating season. So just capturing a small piece of the window without that context can create a lot, of unintended consequences. And my unwillingness to see things differently, i.e., forgive myself or anybody else, creates a lot of unintended consequences. And the best thing I can do now, and the skill set has provided me, my training skill set, and again, support like yours and other people, my thinking skill set. Emily Strong at Pet Harmony, she's been just a remarkable friend and advocate in my growth. The willingness and ability to think about how I think, and to not act on how I feel, but to be willing to sit with the feeling and then make other choices. That changes directly what I do with a dog and with a human. And I'm good with that. And the last thing I wanted to offer too, just to finish up with the trajectory of my work, about 5-6 months ago, I just was at my desk and I was just burnt. And my wife Brooke comes in and she says, "What's going on?" I said, I don't think I can do it. Like, I just can't do what I think I am supposed to be doing. And she said, "Well, what does it look like if you do something else?" And that question had not occurred to me. And I've had a lot of amazing life experiences, a lot of amazing life experiences and professional experiences. But I came up with nothing. Like, I was so burnt that I couldn't think of anything else that I would do. And to be honest, I wasn't even sure that I could do anything else. Where am I going to be employable in other areas? And then she said, "What does it look like if you don't work for yourself?" And I just saw myself being lifted up. Like, that would be amazing if I don't work for Matt Beisner. What does it look like if you work for yourself? And I saw immediately, I'm hunched over at my desk with a gray cloud thick with unanswerable questions that only I can answer. And I said, I got to change even who I'm working for, so to speak. So I committed, this was several months ago. So I committed to re-examine everything I'm doing in my business, from structure to interaction, everything, so that I don't have to work for the Matt Beisner that is projecting how an employee should act. I don't want to work for that guy anymore. He's got great insight. He's got some skills. He's smart, but he doesn't let me take breaks to eat. He doesn't let me take breaks for bathroom because he's always inspired about something, but he's not actually collaborating with me. I hope this isn't too out there for anybody, but this is part of the internal dialogue. Like, I don't like how I'm showing up as a boss for me as an employee. And I said, by Labor Day of 2024, I'm either going to have a new structure or I'm not going to do this. And it's changed dramatically for the better.
And that's, I'm sure, again, rather than being out there, I think many will resonate.
Mhm.
Many of us who work for ourselves, and when we have those things, wouldn't it be nice just to work for somebody else and not have these kind of thoughts? But when we think about a lot of the pressures we put ourselves under, a lot of the drives we have, a lot of the internal competitive structures, again, they're often connected to our past, our trauma, our lack of sense of self, our lack of sense of worth. All these things kind of muddle away in the background. and we get overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And I think these periods of reappraisal, which is what you're talking about, are really important, where we give our chance to reappraise our belief system, our value system, our connection to self, our relationship with different things. There's a great deal saying in human psychology that feelings are not facts.
Mm.
And as you say, it's a skill. I think working towards better emotional well-being. I do emotional well-being workshops for professionals, and I think it's important to understand the mechanics of this for ourselves, because it's like physical health, Matt. You
Yeah.
do have to work at it.
Yeah.
And even if you work at it, it doesn't mean you're not going to get the emotional version of a cough and a cold, or
Yeah.
something else that comes along. It's about how you have that kind of relationship with things.
Yeah.
So when we think about this journey then, and to bring it up to date,
Yeah.
and again, what I hear from you is what you've found as you've kind of turned what might have been more of a challenge in the past to what is now really a superpower,
Yeah.
which is that connection, that ability to connect, that ability to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think all of us who work in this kind of more care-oriented way, it is about offering to another a process of supported awareness,
Yeah.
both of their own experience and that of their dog, of course. I think
Yeah.
that's what we're supporting. So
Yeah.
if we bring you up to date then, Matt, I know you've had some quite tricky cases of late. And I think what we'll be interested to know is some of the practical side of this, and also maybe a little bit of if we could almost have a cut screen now of
Yeah.
maybe how Matt would have dealt with that in the past, and
Yeah.
now how you're doing it and getting those best outcomes because of this different
Yeah.
mindset, I guess.
Yeah. It's a great question. Thanks, Andy. So I'm currently working with what I would judge to be the most complex case of my career. And that's not to say that they haven't been equally complex. Maybe I'm just more sensitive to this one than I was in the past. So, with fairness to whatever dog and family I was working with, this individual dog had a really, he's a mini poodle, really serious eye injury. Something got lodged in his eye. And for a number of reasons, part of them being human projections, it didn't get treated immediately, which meant he was suffering without support. These people weren't trying to be negligent. They just, no pun intended, they didn't see what he needed. So the eye has since healed. He's lost legitimate part of function in the eye, but over time he began to go on hunger strikes. He's approximately about a year and a half now. So he missed in that healing process. He missed a really important part of opportunity to access the outside world. And he began to go on hunger strikes. His sleep has been, it's not uncommon for him to wake up 20 times a night. So his nervous system is inflamed, to say the least. And I now find myself in this amazing opportunity where I am the lead on a team that includes, shout out to Tara, Zen Dog Fearless Grooming. I'm working with an occupational therapist. We're working with a holistic vet who has a Chinese herbal certification as well. We are also working with a nutritionist. I believe we have 5 or 6 people on this team to support this dog, and this family is willing and and um, craving feedback on how they are projecting their matters onto this dog. So for me, this is an extraordinarily uh, it's a really fulfilling experience for me in that it is like the culmination of everything that I have been working towards to be able to offer over many, many years. And I love working with teams, by the way. So this dog, this sweet dog, because the olfactory bulb, which was right behind the left eye, was impacted, his sense of smell has been compromised. And a whole other host of behavioral issues fall out of that. So one of them being, I can't smell it, I'm probably not going to eat it. So hence the hunger strikes. So when the team reached out to me, when the family reached out to me, they had gone through a host of uh, just a whole host of options, and I was really they were really hurt because they were dismissed and treated very poorly by a lot of professionals, a lot of our colleagues, and they didn't feel heard, and they felt gaslit. And so when they reached out to me, I don't have direct experience with. I mean, I've worked with food aversion cases, but nothing like this that's as complex and layered as this that I've been aware of. And they said, we'd like your help. And they'd not actually seen any of my previous work. They took the recommendation from me from a dear family friend. So that was great too, because we both came in fairly clean and objectively. And I said, there's a lot of things that I probably can't support you with directly. I can make recommendations and I can support the supporters. But if I were to approach this from a place of helping reduce your dog's stress, i.e., how do we take the pressure off? Would you be willing to see, with appropriate adjunct support, would you be willing to see if his aversion to food might change? If his leash reactivity might change. I put reactivity in quotes because I think generally we're suffering from, our dogs are suffering from an epidemic of unmet needs and feelings. And they said, yes, we'd be willing to do that. So the way that I came at this I'm not certified as a trauma-based practitioner, but I have pulled a lot of what I've seen from what's out there. And one of the things that I've seen that keeps showing up for me where there have been traumatic experiences. And here I want to acknowledge Dr. Gabor Mate, world-renowned human trauma and addiction specialist who defines trauma. He says we typically think about trauma in terms of what happened to us, but we rarely think about it in terms of what did not happen for us. And when he said that, my mind went to 15 years of dogs. Mm-hmm. So I approached this from how do I support this dog, and how do I support this dog from a consent first place with a dog who may not even have the processing abilities to clearly demonstrate a yes or no in the learning history and any of that clearly in a way that I can understand. So I start with, how do I reward this dog for saying no? What does no look like for you, my little friend? And how do I reward you for saying no? And that's where I started. So when I first came into the house and sat down on the floor and he was able to have whatever behavior he wanted to have, and it was conflicted and there's a lot of insecure attachment behavior. And so what I do with this new person, and I'm overstimulated and all of those things, anytime he opted out or said no, I just rewarded him. Now he's got food aversion, mind you. So I had to be particular about what food I was using if he was going to take food at all. But he responded so quickly to having somebody respect his no, which through no fault of the families, with all of the medical concerns, there was a ton of no choice events that the family was putting on him in the effort to care for him. So it was really, really complicated for everybody and loaded. But he responded so quickly and continues to respond so well to being allowed to say no, to being rewarded for saying no, that things started to change and his appetite started to change. And his ability to be responsive on a leash started to change. And they had not been able to get him to a vet. He needed a particular kind of care, and the nearest vet that could provide that care was 2 hours away, but he had panic attacks in the car. And so I want to offer this not I want to be clear. What I'm about to share is not to show how good I am. It's to show what happens when the dog responds. So I knew there needed to be a very gentle approach to reacclimating the experience of being in the car. But this dog had responded so well, no but, this dog had responded so well to being heard that on day 3 of my initial in-person visit, they had brought me in from out of Texas to where they live, to the state they live in. So I was there for about 9 days initially. Um, the dog had responded so well that when we went outside to just do, for me to just get a feel for how the dog feels about the car, he moved so quickly through his processing. I wasn't forcing, I wasn't luring. I was really, really conscientious about his no, that within 15 minutes, he was taking 20-minute car rides around the neighborhood. And within 2 days, he was taking 3-hour car rides. So the vet care he needed became accessible to him because the car became accessible to him because he heard, because he felt heard. And that is stuff beyond, like, there's technical things that I've done, but the thing that I want to highlight is the way I have learned to be willing to think put me in a position where I could meet that dog in a way where my previous experience wouldn't suggest that I'd be able to help them. But I knew if we could start here and it worked for this dog, then something else would happen. And I, they're private, and I want to respect their privacy. And the family has done a ton of personal work about their own projection on the dog, and the progress is remarkable. And he's now regularly at dog parks. I was at the vet with him not long ago, and he got the care he needed, and he was legitimately calm. I mean, there's so many things that happened, like an inverse game of whack-a-mole. Instead of the issues stacking up, all of a sudden he's starting to demonstrate this just beautiful shift. His body's looser. He's sleeping big chunks of the night now. I mean, so many things have happened. So that is a real-time example. That's a real-time example of what's going on right now.
And your presence, this might seem a bit of a enough analogy, but I just listened to you talking. It was your presence that pushed over the first domino that allowed the next and the next and the next, and all those other physiological things that started shifting and changing for him. And this is the power of feeling heard. I think, and also it demonstrates very clearly the difference between what we might do extrinsically and what is going on intrinsically, and the intrinsic motivation. And actually the power of being able to say no means that you're more likely to say yes when you're ready. And we all feel that, don't we? I think that's a powerful thing. And being available to him as an individual dog, and looking at all those different aspects, and thinking about, but we talked about this a little bit off air, actually. I think what's really important, especially for trainers, I think, listening into these conversations, is understanding that this is an evolving area where we start thinking more about the individual dog, because we've learned a lot about dogs in the past. And I think a lot of learning theory gave us an idea about how they learn. But sadly, I think more traditionally that has been used to think about, okay, now we know how you learn. How can we get you to do stuff?
Sure.
Now, though, we can still use this same learning. We're just broadening our toolkits. I think this is the key. So rather than the operant stuff, the important word for me for the beyond the operant was the beyond bit. It wasn't instead of operant, it was beyond. Sure. Building up these toolkits and understanding that actually, even through training can be helpful if we were looking to provide some predictability. If we're trying to provide the brain to consider other choices, I think we can build these things in. But if we're starting from the point of view of learning from the dog first, you can't go too far wrong there. And I think that's definitely what this case provided everybody.
Yeah.
And you're inviting that, and you creating that safe space. Dr. Peter Levine, who's another trauma expert, talks about creating safety is the work, providing the safety is the treatment, or whichever way around. No, creating safety is the treatment, providing the safety is the work. So our job, our work is to provide the safety, because the safety, even in that relationship with the caregivers, so that they could look at their own projections, as you say, and analyze that stuff and go on that journey and look at those, getting those best outcomes.
Yeah, I think that anything that I've been able to bring to this relationship and is in working with these people, credit to these people, credit to this dog who is eating. I mean, there's just so many things that I'm like privileged to be a part of, and this dog is just life changing. But everything that I've brought to this is a direct result of everything that I've learned from any of you, you, Andy, and any of you who are in the sphere of my life experience, all of it. So this dog's success is a credit to all of you who, whether you know, have helped me or not, because I arrived with you in the room and I am recovering from voices in my head, and now I can hear suggestions in my ear. And another thing I want to highlight is that I put a lot of effort into educating myself and learning and developing my skill set. And I'm actually doing very little training here, but I have all of that training available to me. So we can use play as an opt out. We can support him to feel more comfortable in what might be experienced as a non-consenting event, like a grooming. Like there's a lot that can be done, but I'm kind of curious and amazed at how little actual training is happening, because this dog just he just needed to be heard in a way that I wouldn't have thought of before. So to your the split screen in the past, um, what needs to be fixed and how can I change it? And that's just the way to get it done. And and if I'm committed to that way, which is has a ton of obvious limitations and a lot of limitations that aren't so obvious, but they leave threads of disturbance for the family or the dog in question. So the inherent problem with that is I know the answer, so we're already in trouble. Not just because I'm not just saying if Matt Beisner knows the answer, but coming in with I know the answer assumes that I actually understand the question.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. Also, I come in as an authority, which then hierarchically assumes that you, the dog caretaker who lives with the dog, who is hiring me to come in and help you, you are less than an authority, which means that in the hierarchy, I'm actually now the most important person in the room, when in fact the dog and its family are the most important people beings. In fact, the best thing I can do is matter as little as possible. And what a relief that is for me, who's recovering from an ego-driven life. So
Yeah.
I come in, I'm the authority, I have the answers, I have the skills because I know how to change behavior. But everything that I don't know, and that I don't know that I don't know, or that I don't know that I don't care about because I'm still getting reinforced because I have the answer and you're paying me and tra la la, like all of that stuff, it's going to fall out. It's going to fall out. And at least there's enough evidence now to show that something that happened at 2 years old can show up at 5 years old. So if I'm not in it for the long game for that dog, I shouldn't be in it at all. I have no business being in your home or taking your money.
And that's really profound as well, because uh, I think there's this comes back to this sometimes feeling a bit lacking in confidence of self, actually can come across as sometimes going into homes thinking, well, I need to spend this first hour telling you my knowledge and showing you how good I am, without realizing the power imbalance that creates. You've now created a power imbalance within that relationship.
Yep.
And actually feeling that you can turn up and not say much, but hear and
Yeah.
be available. And that's why I've got my CAKE acronym: compassion, awareness, knowledge, empathy, because that's what we need to bring. We bring the CAKE. The compassion helps us to turn up, and then we have to be as aware as we can be of the other's lived experience. The knowledge, yes, we have knowledge, but we're there to seek knowledge on their terms, in their language, how they need to express, without us correcting them or putting them right. I think that's a really powerful thing. And also there's another little construct in human psychology, which is kind of sums up everything we've talked about, especially in this case, is that there is a big difference between what we are taught and what we learn. And I think when we're having, and that's important because if we have a very task orientated approach, which is, as you say, I'm going to get the task done, we're going to get you to walk better on the lead, I'm going to get you to stop barking, I'm going to do whatever.
Yeah.
We might get that done, but what is that nervous system? What is that dog inherently learning from that process regarding choice, agency, ability to communicate? I had a client only the other day that I was seeing she's trying to do things this way, but you have unhelpful family unit around who have their worldview that they're trying to project with
Yeah.
this constant kind of phrasing of, well, the dog's got to learn. I'm writing a little article about this at the moment because that approach is so damaging for many, including kids. Well, they've got to learn. That child who feels uncomfortable getting undressed in the changing room at sports, well, they've got to learn. That child who has to come downstairs to be sociable with family, but they've got to learn.
Yeah.
The lesson we feel they're being taught, one thing, but what are they actually learning?
Yeah.
I think this is the key to how we're trying to think about things moving forwards in that move to task care. Well, Matt, I think the time's flown by, and it's been really powerful. You very kindly said at the beginning about how our kind of conversations have been a part of your own journey, and I have to say, every time I share space with you, I'm inspired by our conversations.
Mm.
I feel your story very deeply, and I always feel a better human from our time together. So
Oh,
that's a gift, and I really appreciate that.
thank you, Andy.
And I really want to reassure you that whilst all our journeys are different, um, we are all the sum of all that's gone before us. And
Mm.
if we are able to give ourselves that opportunity of reappraisal, those things that have been hard in the past now become something of aid and
Yeah.
assistance, especially in how we can support others.
Yeah.
And it's a valuable part of the process. And all the people I interview and talk to in the group, and we're getting on for 90 conversations now. I don't know how that's happened. It's just interesting hearing that people found that shift either through somebody that's inspired them, but often through a dog
Yeah.
that allowed them to have a little safe window back on themselves a little bit and start that process.
Yeah.
Couple of things to finish with them. First of all, is there anything you want to share before we go? And secondly, tell us about what you're doing and what things are coming up and where they can find more Matt.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to share. I have a 10-year-old. Um, she's a blue nose pit mixed with a blue Lacey. Blue Lacey is the state dog of Texas. So she's about a 30-pound, gorgeous greyhound looking, um, um, beautiful dog. We named her Deja Blue because we're kind of geeks like that. And Deja is, at one point, we had 8 dogs with us. We're now down to 2. Deja is one of them. And I have come to recognize since one of my dogs passed, since my Jindo passed within the last year, that she's blossoming at 10 years old. She's blossoming. And I didn't recognize it because I was spending so much time managing high risk behavior and managing it pretty well in our home with dogs with bite level 5 and 6 histories. But Deja's getting her needs met, and I am adjusting, recalibrating to who this dog is now. And there is a beautiful relationship that is unfolding. And what an unbelievable gift that I get to do that with her, and that she's allowing me to grow with her. So in the spirit of my primary purpose which is to support change and transformation in humans and animals, um, I got an opportunity to connect with a couple of colleagues, Petra Berglund, who is in Finland, and Jessica Ackerstrom, who is in Sweden. And we have worked for a year and a half and added in Daniela Garcia, who's in Mexico, and my business partner, Michael Casella. And we are putting forward the Dog People Evolution Conference, the inaugural Dog People Evolution Conference, which is to be held virtually and live in Sweden in late May of 2025. And for anybody who's watching, Andy's already agreed. He's already tattooed his agreement on his arm that he's going to be one of our in-person speakers there. And it's going to be an extraordinary opportunity. Here's what DP is about. It's about the reality that you don't have to fit in, you already belong. And the Dog People Evolution is less about the evolution of dogs and more about the evolution of us as dog people. And the singular focus of the entire conference, which at this point, through verbal agreement, boasts about 35 people from 8 different countries. We can arguably safely say representing more of the people's global majority in terms of who gets to speak and who's there than any of the other popular conferences, at a cost appropriate, accessible price. Our topic is change. How have we changed? And how can we support others who are curious about change? And that's it. It's not a conventional dog training conversation or conference, because there are plenty of those with people of exceptional skill and insight. My direct lived experience, and in keeping with my purpose, is if I can help more people, regardless of what I think, feel, or judge about them, if I can help more dog people change, then more dogs are going to get help. And that's my position. And that is what my mission looks like. So Dog People Evolution is on its way. And otherwise, you can find me. I'm at thezendog.com. I'm on social media, Matt_Beisner, Beisner. I'm on Facebook. And if I'm not there, it's just because I have prioritized things and I'm watching for my mental health, and I'm trying to play the next 20 years with that kind of sensitivity. The next 20 years of work, if I have it in this field to give, I want to leave something that's useful for the next person and dog that comes along.
And you do that. You're doing that already. Even if you stop today, Matt, there are ripples around you that are positive. And I love you, my friend, and I really value our time today. It's been a great conversation. I always enjoy our conversations, and we've had many, and can't wait to meet you in person. I think that's going to be really special for me.
Yeah, same.
Okay, great. Well, amazing comments in the chat tonight. I've been trying to keep an eye on some of them, and thank you for the love that you've shown Matt this evening. And your home is in dog centre care, Matt. I think dog centre care is a natural place, and I really value your time tonight. Just before we go, we have another one of the Bark series on Sunday with Sir Abby. And then next week, we've got Susan Clothier coming in.
Also speaking at DPE.
Yes. So I think Susan found Dog Centre Care because of us being connected in the speakers group, actually.
Right.
And then we had a conversation. I wish, if you're listening, Susan, I wish we'd recorded that conversation. It was quite a conversation too. But Susan's coming in, a bit of a Dog Centre Care special. So there's a lot for us to unpack with Susan. What a wonderful, consistent voice in our community for a while, and a lot to talk about. Great. Lots of things coming up. Keep an eye on the events thing. Thanks again, Matt, for tonight. It's been amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Yeah, I love you too. Thank you, everybody, for letting me be here.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.